Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Firaxis Mega Panel here at PAX South. I am your host, Chris Waters. I am often found as a host or producer at GameSpot.com. I'm the author of The Gamer's Bucket List, and once again, I'm honored to be the moderator here at the Firaxis Mega Panel. I'm going to go ahead and without further ado have our distinguished panelists introduce themselves right on down the line, and we'll get this thing started. That's you, Greg.
Wait a minute, we got to point out your little...
No way. You guys did it again?
We did it again.
Yep. What do you think? How's the likeness?
Pretty close.
I kill for a chin like that, man. That's great.
Is that a live feed down there?
That is cool.
Awesome.
Yes. All right. So let's see you guys see how you did. There we go.
There we go. All right. I'm Greg Furch. I'm the art director on Xcom 2. And you guys, we're 5 days from launch. A little more clapping. Come on. All right.
All right. I'm liking that hairdo, Greg.
And I'm Ryan McFall. I'm the lead engineer on XCOM 2. I joined Firaxis specifically to work on XCOM, so it's been great.
Excellent.
I'm Brian Hess. I'm the lead level designer on XCOM 2, and I'm apparently the only guy who does not tweet.
I'm John Lumpkin. I'm the design lead from Long War Studios. I'm the guy that started the Long War mod, and still... I'm still not entirely sure how I ended up here, but very happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you, John, because as you guys know from the panel title, going to be talking a bunch about mods, character customization, and show you some live gameplay of that stuff in action. But, you know, when John introduced himself, we heard some cheers for the Long War mod. How many of you folks use mods with Enemy Unknown and Enemy Within? Pretty solid amount here, and of course, tons more around the world. And so that's why mods really became part of the discussion from day one on XCOM 2. Isn't that right, Greg?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the things we started out with. As we sat down, 4 people in a room looking at what we wanted to make, it seemed like everybody wanted more. And so we really wanted to figure out how we could provide more, and part of that is our community. So that kind of led us to the content partnership with Long War Studios.
Now, Long War got a bunch of name recognition so far, but for those folks in the audience who don't know what the Long War mod's all about, John, why don't you give us a little bit of an overview?
Sure. Long War started about 3 years ago when I finished playing EU and wanted to keep playing. And there wasn't much of it was just the very beginnings of a modding community at that time, I think because it was just so technically difficult to mod. So I started going on the forums, on the Nexus, asking questions. Not long after that, my partner Rachel, who is Aminari on the forums, you might recognize her name, joined up, and she and several others, we started to kind of break out how to mod EU and EW. Or EU and then later EW. And the mod kind of grew organically from there. I mean, we discover how to do something, how to make an alien bigger, and that led to the Queen Chrysalid, or we discover how to add new weapons, and we would add a whole bunch of new choices for the players, and so and we kept doing it as long as it kept fun. The team grew, and we had about 50 contributors from every continent except Antarctica. I don't know what their problem is.
Step it up, Antarctica.
And so yeah, it was we spent about 3 years on it, and finally called it done in December. And we had a big team and thousands of players who gave us great feedback along the way.
And now when you sit down, right, so you're playing the game and you say, I want more. Like, where do you start? What do you start with more? I mean, there's so many different facets of the game, so many different ways to sort of think, oh gosh. Yeah, where do you start, and then what the hell are we looking at?
Well, I think for us it started with what we could do. And so, I mean, the first things I wanted to do were pretty simple, kind of a longer campaign, sort of make some things that a player could take for granted and turn them into a problem, like how much damage a grenade does or something like that. So way down at the mechanics level. This is what modding EU looked like. This is a notepad file that I kept, and it was all just before and after hex strings that we'd plug into a hex editor and search and replace, search and replace, search and replace, which is insane. And after EW came out, we got a little better at it. And Rachel and a nice German named Alexander put this together, kind of a development tool for modding Xcom, which is, again, it's still hex editing, but this kind of allowed us to control what we were plugging in. And it's strange. I have 12 hours of computer science in college. I'm not a professional programmer or anything, but you can get to the point where that makes sense. And you start seeing things in the numbers and knowing what the commands they translate into. So it certainly is possible. Just take some time.
Yeah, talking with Rachel, she sort of developed an aptitude for just reading script code in its native, machine language form.
It's kind of like the Matrix, I think. You get there.
Well, Ryan, I want to get your perspective here, because while John and his team are looking at all this hex code and sort of figuring out ways to push into XCOM and add new things, you're watching from the other side, seeing them pick apart and sort of restructure your code.
Yeah, I think from the very beginning we were sort of following along what the modding community was doing and what Nexus was doing. It almost started with the demo that we released for EU, which was a little bit more of a narrow sandbox. It had some tutorial stuff, but then eventually people just kind of unlocked it, and you could play whatever you wanted in that tutorial, just one mission of it. And so that was pretty neat. And so eventually, I remember we got some correspondence from the Long War group asking if we could release the script source for EU. And at that time, of course, that's like the legal team's worst nightmare. And so they said no, but that kind of got the seed growing for, maybe we could work with them on the next one. So that's where that kind of came from.
And that's where we're going in just a sec. But let's wrap up the origin story with kind of you finished Long War in December. And what do you when you play Enemy Within with Long War mod, what kind of experience is that? How is that different? What are sort of the fundamental ways that that's different from just playing normal XCOM?
We slaughter a lot more soldiers. No, I mean, we really set out to, we started with great base material in the base game. And, we wanted to extend that. Find things that were certain, turn them into problems, throw a whole bunch more problems at the player, but also throw a whole bunch more tools at them. So we added classes, perks, weapons. So there's a lot of choices that the player can make to get to the end game. And I guess certainly its reputation is that it's very long and difficult, and that certainly isn't its DNA. I mean, over time we tried to add ways to make it, or add sort of easier modes and that kind of thing, and even shorter modes, so not quite as Long War.
It's not as catchy a name, though.
No.
When you first built it, did you expect people to win?
I mean, I always wanted it to be possible. At least technically possible. No, I mean, our idea was I guess the focus kind of changed where we would judge, and this was all with feedback and players, and we would make mistakes along the way. We made things too hard, or we'd make things overpowered. In either case, that kind of makes, in my mind, that's less fun. Even overpowered stuff can be less fun because it's taking away your choices. You have to go that way. So it always was a balancing effort and everything. But our mind was to make the campaign beatable. Individual missions might be too hard, and you have to kind of add running away to your toolbox, which was an adjustment for some players, I think.
Well, the result, the Long War mod, beloved by many around the world, and then the story that we all love to hear in the gaming community, the hardworking modder gets hooked up with the studio. And so for XCOM 2, you guys came on in talks pretty early with Firaxis and getting on board to make some stuff for the game to be ready for launch.
Yeah, that's right. Last year, Rachel and I and some others, we talked to some people in the industry, and they were encouraging us to make our own game. And we had started down that path when 2K called and said, and this is kind of the middle of last year, 2K said, "Can you sign a non-disclosure agreement?" And I said, "Yes." And then they said, "We're making XCOM 2. It's going to have a great deal of modding capability. Do you want to make some mods for us?" And I said, "Let me think about it. Yes." So I took, they wanted us to kind of have a small, compact team. So my partner Rachel and artist James Carlson, whose handle is JC Lewis, you may have seen. And he, let's see, so Rachel kind of came on as our engineering lead, and JC is our artist. And we pitched some mods to make, three kind of individual mods you could plug into the main campaign, and they're going to be available for release or on release day for free on the Steam Workshop. So, and part of our work along the way too was we worked really closely with these guys to give them feedback. They gave us full access to the game. We got builds as Firaxis made them. We got all the assets and the modding toolkit. So we were able to give them feedback not only on the toolkit and how well it worked, but also on ways to make the base game more moddable. Places to add what are called hooks, which are ways to kind of access the base game without having to change it. That makes modding, different mods from different players and groups a lot more compatible with each other. So, and they were incredibly responsive throughout, so it's been great.
Well, let's take a look at some of these mods you got cooked up.
All right, so this is the first one. These are kind of going in the order from where the programming gets increasingly challenging, but this was certainly the most challenging from the art side. So these are a series of new weapons for XCOM. You can see they're kind of submachine guns, or the sort of equivalent of those. They have that roll. And these can be equipped by any soldiers that can equip an assault rifle. And so, like we tried to do in Long War, there's a trade-off with these. So we want these to be balanced. They can fit right into the main campaign without making it too easy or too hard, despite our reputation. So these are all brand new models by JC. And these are the first 3D models he'd ever made. He's recently out of art school, and so this was his first time doing them, and they came out great. And so the way these fit into the game is you equip them, and they can give you a mobility bonus, and they also make you harder to detect. So this is the conventional submachine gun, and so if you've seen some of the playthroughs, the bad guys all have this kind of detection range around them. And if you're carrying a submachine gun, it's a more compact weapon, easier to hide. They can't quite see you. You can get closer to them when you're carrying one of these without them kind of activating and shooting you and all sort of bad thing. This is the Stutter Gun. This is the kind of magnetic tier weapon, submachine gun, same role. And these all you can do all the weapon upgrades that you can do to the other weapons. And then here is the beam tier. So these slide right in, and you know, they research when you can get you can research them roughly when you get the assault rifles of the same class and of the same tech level, excuse me. So we're
Does that one
pretty
turn
heavy.
into a light cycle? Very cool. So that was some weapon mods, and now we're looking at a Mutant.
The Mutant Centurion, because we're Long War and we like to kill soldiers, not players. This is a new bad guy that we're adding, and again, this is a retexture of the Mutant we've already seen. We made him bigger and added that cool helmet that he's got up there, and he's kind of a leader among aliens, and he can, so we wrote some code that gives him some new perks that let him kind of help all the other aliens around him. He's meant to be a tough customer, but we also slid him in so he comes in the campaign when it's feasible that Xcom should be able to handle him.
Feasible.
Feasible.
Do y'all get the feeling that John's trying to kill every one of you?
I
he's
believe
not
in you.
alone.
You can do it.
So we're talking modding guns, modding enemies, but also enemy behavior and putting in different kind of attributes and battlefield mechanics.
That's right. Different abilities and an AI to use those abilities. That's all configurable. That's all available for people to mod. Mod when they show up in the campaign. What kind of benefits you might get if you manage to knock him off. And so now this is an image from the third mod that's going to be available, and this is a new development path for soldiers. We're kind of a leader mod, and it was inspired by the officer mod we did for Long War for EW. And this works. This is a series of new perks that soldiers can get. And the mechanics are, you go into the guerrilla tactics school, you expend some resources to set this up, and then you can start training some of your higher ranking soldiers with these special abilities. And these are meant to help the team. So you can use something like Oscar Mike, for example. You use that and everybody close to the leader gets a 1-turn mobility bonus, that sort of thing. And this is kind of like the way the psionic characters worked in EW, where this is a development path that's on top of the regular class development. But there are trade-offs. Again, we don't want to just overpower these guys. So in addition to the kind of time you need to train these and the resources, you can only take one leader on a mission at a time, except in some very special circumstances. So, and you sort of as you build your team and who goes on which missions and works together, if you have 2 leaders, they can't go on missions together anymore. So, and again, we try to embed that balance, that trade-off, so these will just, slide right into the campaign and not unbalance things.
And I think the fact that you're releasing these mods on Friday with the main game sort of speaks to that. You know, they're meant to complement and be just integrated into the course of the game and not sort of rewrite the whole thing.
That's right, but there certainly is room to do that. And in terms of the capabilities of the tools, I don't really know what the top end of the modding capability is. I mean, I don't think you can mod the game to make you a sandwich, but
You do still have to use our executable, so that's
right, all right. So there's that. But really, I mean, we haven't hit where the really hard constraints are yet, and all the exploring and things we've done. And so it's more likely. I mean, it's on you guys. It's on the modders to, for the teams that come together, the individuals to do the coding, to do the artwork. But it really is the sky's the limit.
And I confess, I've been looking at these images and thinking about it from a player perspective. Okay, how am I going to work submachine guns into my arsenal? Like, how am I going to use those leader abilities? But that's a part of how extensively you guys have been incorporating mods into the game thus far, is that making the mods, it's not You don't have to look at an entire notepad full of hexadecimal code. It's not that daunting. So we're going to go ahead now and talk about some of the mod tools. And I'm curious to know how many of you in the audience have done any modding yourself? See a few hands out there. Well, how many of you guys have like made a level in Mario Maker? More? Less? Not a Mario Maker crowd? But I think that, you know, there's one kind of modding that we were sort of talking about during the Long War development, but you guys are hoping to make modding a whole different kind of thing. Certainly more accessible in XCOM 2.
Yeah, certainly the barrier for entry has been lowered quite a bit since you don't have to be able to read machine code. And there's actually a couple different levels of mod functionality that we provide. The mods that we were showing off that the Long War Studios group did, that's kind of the simplest add-on style of mod. They didn't make any changes to the base game to do that mod. That's all new script code, that's all new INI files, it's all new stuff. You can actually, if you want to change the way the base game operates, dig in to the base game classes and start changing them. And there's another third level, which is, I guess, you know, expert mode, which is where you would basically rebuild our content and rebuild the script packages that come with the game. So I'm going to show off some of the tools that we've made available. So we kind of touched on these at Firaxis this year, but we haven't shown what they actually are. So I'm going to fire it up. That was the splash screen briefly there. This is the front end for the mod tools. It uses the Firaxis Mod Buddy kind of framework. And so I'm
friendly.
going to open up a mod here called Example Weapon. This is a mod project, and so I'm going to show kind of what goes into making a mod. So here's the picture that would go up on Steam Workshop if you were to upload this. Some of you might recognize this. This is Officer Bradford's gun. So this is an example of kind of the quickest type of mod that you can do, which is to take something that's already in the content, just not exposed. You kind of saw this in Long War with the certain weapon classes were borrowed from Exalt. So this is an example of that style of mod, just easy, more approachable. So the core part of this mod is the script code. You're going to produce a new script package that enables this. And so this is script code that you can basically copy and paste from our game and then tweak it to provide your own stuff. So we gave Officer Bradford's gun a little bit more damage, a little bit more crit. And it also gives whoever's carrying it suppression. So you don't need to be a special class. You can just have suppression if you have this gun enabled. This is the loc file. So if you wanted to localize your mods into all the different languages that we support, then that's doable. I think Long War, your guys' mods are localized?
They are in, 10 languages?
All right.
This we didn't do that ourselves. We had the help from 2K on that one.
And these are the packages that kind of describe what the gun looks like and how it sounds and shoots. And so when you're running the IDE, you have the ability to build new script packages. You can debug the game, which we'll cover a little bit later. And last but not least, you can publish to Steam. And we also have a pathway for if you don't want to use Steam Workshop, there's other methods to get your mods out. You can zip up the folder and kind of distribute that manually. If you just drop the files into XCOM's directories, it'll find it and incorporate it into the game. So I'm going to launch the editor here, which is probably our crown jewel of what we're providing.
Got a few assets. Just a couple.
Those messages are normal. So what we've got here is the editor running live. We're going to switch to a video of the editor running just for expediency's sake. And I'll sort of describe what we did with the editor. So the editor was a real labor of love just because, we're releasing a ton of stuff with it. Back up. There you go. And so from the very beginning, we kind of talked about, what would it take to kind of unlock modding to provide everything. Some technological difficulties. There we go. And early on, I started just shoot for the moon. Let's give everyone the editor. And they said, okay, let's do that. And I was like, okay, well, first, I guess we need to find out if that's legal. And it was. So the next step was, a big shout out to Greg and his art team, making sure that all the assets that we gave out were also good.
Or legal.
And so what I'm looking at here is the content browser. This is basically where you're going to see what went into the 45 gig download that you just got. So that's a lot of content, and the reason for that is because in order to really work with the editor, you need a lot more data than what we provide in the shipping game. The shipping game is this compact, really fast to load format that doesn't have anything that the editor could use in it. And so we're offering a separate download of the game's kind of basically source files that you can work with. This is kind of the anim set for the Advent group. So if you want to take this anim set, export it, tweak it, add a new anim set, that's perfectly within your power. So this is where most of the power of the mod tools comes from. The other thing is that since we're providing all of the assets that went into making XCOM, it's kind of bootstrapping the modding community, which was something that was important to us. This is the Andromedon anim set. So if you want to give him new death animations, be our guest. And later on, we're going to show some of the character creation stuff, some of the content that you can add. We have a beards package. If you want to add new beards, that's an option. And so we've really kind of opened everything up to the modding community with these changes. There it is. There's the beard package. So the editor kind of forms the foundation of what you would do if you want to kind of create new content for a mod. And one of the main forms of new content that we're expecting people to do is new maps. So what we're providing with the editor is over 7,000 of the props that went into making XCOM. So from tables to coffee pots. This is a video of the soldier walking up animation. That's one of the personality types. So adding a new personality to the lineup of personalities is doable if you've got the animation chops.
Can we get a moonwalker in there? Just lighten the mood a little bit.
I think that might have happened in the game already.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A few bugs. They're all fixed now.
Naturally.
But so we were showing off the particle effect editor there. So this is the Advent kind of drop-in flare. I know not everyone's a huge fan of knowing in advance where that's going to happen. So if you wanted to make that go away, that's certainly an option. And here we're going to load up one of the parcels that we're shipping with the editor. There's over 2,400 maps that have gone into XCOM. That's quite a bit more than Enemy Unknown. And so in addition to the maps that go in the tactical game, we're also releasing all the maps that go into the rest of everything else. So we have cinematic maps. So all of the pre-rendered cinematics that you've seen, we have all the source content for that. If you want to make new kind of stories in XCOM, that's doable. Unreal has a great kind of cinema tool for building cinematic scenes, and so we kind of share all of that with the community. We also have all of the rooms for the Avenger and the framework for the Avenger. So
There's a lot.
Yep.
So where do you, looking at the editor, you can scroll through and see what kind of, some beards, some weaponry, some landscape stuff. Where do you guys recommend people who are curious about modding start once they get their hands on these tools?
I'd recommend to start simple. Don't start out with a co-op mod, although, if co-op is what you're into, you could kind of build up to it, hopefully. One of the things that we're going to talk about coming up is what the possibilities are if you want to dig into multiplayer modding. So this is a list of all the assets that have gone into the editor. You can see there's quite a few, 10,000 textures. Pretty sure we have a texture for everything. And
including pigeons, apparently.
Yes, the pigeons are actually a particle effect for anyone who's curious. all of the little creatures of the world kind of are particle effects. Even the vignette of the owl coming down and picking up a rat and flying off with it, that's a particle effect, you know. So we have a mad genius.
Does that mean you can make a gun that fires pigeons?
You could.
Someone get on that.
It's all right there.
So, I mean, so Greg, as an asset creator, you know, how is it to just kind of, I mean, you're giving people keys to the kingdom here,
Pretty much.
basically. Like, how
Pretty
does that
much.
feel? Is it a little daunting?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I mean, I think that I'm very intrigued by it. Like, I want to see what people do with what we've provided. You know, we have things that we've been trying to make and things that we've been doing for so long now that I'm really curious to see what the community is going to take from that and what they want to do with it, and how they're going to grow it. So, yeah, we're giving them pretty much everything, but I'm really excited to see what they come back with.
Pigeon guns.
Yeah, I want to see a pigeon gun, like February 6th.
Shooting out of Officer Bradford's gun.
Out of Bradford's gun.
Yeah, we do have. We also do have, as part of the SDK, a set of mod kind of template projects for people to look at and see how to build different types of mods. So voice packs, map packs, that sort of thing. There'll be kind of this giant list of what kind of mod do you want to build. Choose this, and it'll show you how.
If I may, in terms of where modders might start, I mean, if somebody especially hasn't done anything like this before, you can just start by changing game constants. These are numbers that are in INI files. And even with that, and this just changes the power of a gun or a perk or something like that, you can make a significantly different game just doing that. And that's where the fun starts, is you change it up a little bit and then you play it and you see how it plays out, and it's different. And so that does kind of give you just beginnings of the kind of control and the way you can start telling new stories using these. So that would be my recommendation.
That's certainly been experimented with by some of the streamers, I think.
Yeah.
And that's one example of kind of how far we had to come to get to the state of modding where we are now. I think even modifying INI files in the base XCOM was not necessarily a trivial thing to do, because the game would sort of stomp on them from deep within.
That was the one thing they'd actually figured out how to do that before I started. And it was like changing the EXE. So
yes, they were all.
Can I talk about that? I don't know, but it's.
I'm glad we're not doing that anymore.
Right.
So you give people all these tools. Are they going to break your game?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So how do we minimize? How does a modder minimize their game likelihood that they're going to break things?
What we're providing along with the SDK tools is we're kind of unlocking dev mode in the game so that modders who are building their tool set or building their mod don't have to fight the game to kind of figure out what's happening. So we're going to show a little bit of kind of what tools we're providing with kind of this short video here.
If it advances. There we go. There. Is it playing?
The
we
thing
get
that
those
we'll
tools right now?
start with is the console, the dev console. In Enemy Unknown, you had to kind of bend over backwards to get the dev console to come down. And what we've done is, by default, when you launch the game normally through Steam, you won't have access to a dev console. But if you're running from the SDK or with the special Mojo command line options, then you get access to the console. And what we're looking at here is kind of a debug mode. That's a list of everything that's happened in this tactical battle. The game takes note, records everything, and it's part of major changes that we made to the game core to really facilitate modding and to make our lives easier. These dev tools were used extensively by us as well, so our kind of mantra for all of development was, what makes life easier for the modders is going to make life easier for us. So that was the history mode, which lets you see all the stuff that's happened. This is kind of a line of sight debugging mode, which if you're curious why your character can't see that floater on a ramp, that's why. Which incidentally, that issue is gone in XCOM 2, which will kind of illustrate the tool that helped us figure that one out. But this is the map debugging tool. If you're building map content, this is your friend. This is the line of sight kind of visibility voxel debug mode, which lets you see how the game represents sight blocking objects. So this is much higher fidelity than the one that we had in Enemy Unknown and Enemy Within. So it can capture gentle slopes and stairs and ramps and stuff much better. And so this is a fog of war kind of debug mode. Lets you observe what does the fog of war look like from a certain unit's vantage point. You can kind of see what the aliens are seeing, which is also helpful, and also kind of what entire teams are seeing. So this is just kind of, lots of tools in your toolbox as a modder to kind of figure out what's going on.
And it feels like if you're a player also, mastering that line of sight, knowing where fog of war nooks and crannies are going to be, that's just going to help your strategic game too.
Yep. Most of this isn't accessible if you're just playing the game normally, but if you're a modder, you're going to want to get familiar with these tools. We also have a bunch of modding modes that we're not, or debugging tools that we're not showing. This is actually marketing mode, Greg's favorite mode.
I use this all the time.
Yeah. Greg used to come into my office like at 2 in the morning,
Yeah.
angry, angrier than I've ever seen him, because there was like an icon showing up off in the distance on a door, and it ruined the screenshot.
Ruining my pretty art. Yeah, he calls it marketing mode. I'm pretty sure he really calls it Greg, stop knocking on my door mode. He's not kidding about the 2 in the morning. Fix this, please.
So, yep.
Yeah.
And we also have other console commands that we didn't show. We have one that's basically kind of hot seat mode, where you kind of, you're under control.
It's not advancing right. Hold on a second.
So basically in hot seat mode, you control everything that happens in the game, even the alien turn is under player control. This is something that we're proud to show off. We haven't really talked at all about this. And this is replay. This is probably the most powerful debugging tool we have in XCOM 2, which is that history that we're looking at, the game can play that back to you. So that's built into every save game of XCOM 2. If you make a save, you've made a replay file. So what I'm going to show here is kind of it's what Jake calls an interface only a programmer could love. You've got a button basically that kind of advances the replay. So this is a tactical mission. And this is single step mode. What I'm going to show kind of coming up here is kind of the autoplay mode. So if you want to turn on the debug camera and fly around a mission that's kind of progressing on its own, that's an option.
Watch the game tape and figure out where it all went wrong.
Yeah, I'm expecting this might be a little bit, this might be of great interest to streamers and other people who kind of want to make a production. So machinima is also a possibility, but in our case, it really helped us track down bugs because someone would run into a problem, they just give us the replay file, and we could exactly reproduce the thing that happened. The other thing that's kind of important about replay is that it's core to the game. You don't really have to do anything outside the ordinary to make it possible, and for that reason, it's the kind of core framework underlying multiplayer in XCOM 2. So when you're doing multiplayer, you kind of issue your moves, it records the history, and then it sends it off to the other guy. And he replays your turn and then takes his turn and goes back and forth like that. So we didn't have to fight with gameplay over what features could be in multiplayer, because in EU, there are certain enemies and abilities that weren't quite available in multiplayer that we wanted to, but for technical reasons we couldn't do. So that's not an issue in XCOM 2. And it also makes it easier for modders to support multiplayer.
It's pretty cool to hear how the way you guys approached mods and the way you developed this replay system, how it had these knock-on effects throughout development that changed your path and made things easier for you, and ends up the end product feels like it's much richer for it.
Yep. Yeah, and that last bit at the end there was showing how at any point during a replay you can stop it and kind of pick up from where the replay left off.
Very cool. Well, one of the time-honored ways of modding a game, and one of the more ubiquitous sort of opportunities in games is making your own maps. And so you guys can make your own maps, but it's with, procedural stuff and all the different assets we've been looking at, it's a bit of a different beast in XCOM 2. So, Brian, why don't you talk us through it?
Sure. So in Enemy Unknown, we had over 100 tactical maps, and each one of these maps had a unique layout, and there was a focus on visual storytelling. And they were a successful part of the game, but the static nature of the layouts offered limited replayability. So one of our goals in XCOM 2 was to improve replayability. One of the ways we could have done this was by simply making more levels. But instead, we chose to come up with a procedural system to assemble levels out of many smaller parts. This allows for a tremendous variety of layouts and gameplay using fewer maps.
Yeah, and I think as we looked at more, right? I mean, you're looking at a shot of EU here. The levels were really handcrafted. There was a lot of love put into them, but we could only make so many, making them that way. We're trying to figure out how the game played, how the cover of the movement, and so as we were doing that, we're building levels. Having that knowledge going into XCOM 2, it made it a lot easier. And so I was a little worried about whether we're going to retain that quality and that visual fidelity, which was something I actually wanted to drive forward, not backward. And so in going to XCOM 2, this is a shot from XCOM 2. I think you can see there's a pretty dramatic difference in that, my fears on that were pretty much, not something I had to worry about in the long run. We found a lot of ways around it, and it turned out pretty good.
It did turn all the tech on its head.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, again, this is one of the city's center maps, and this is the way this is built with all the procedural stuff. You can see there are multiple things going on here, but yet you really can't see the procedural nature of it. Brian and his team developed a lot of really great stuff to really layer onto those assets.
So each one of these levels that you see here with these lines is symboling where each of the maps splits apart. So each one of those rectangles is a separate map that's assembled when the map loads. And when we're assembling these tactical levels, there's three types of maps that we build to put them all together. Plots, parcels, and PCPs, and we'll go into those kind of maps now. So this is a screenshot in the editor of a plot, and this is the container map that tells the game which other maps to load to assemble the level. And a plot determines the layout of the level, where the player starts, and where his destination is. So in this screenshot, I've highlighted all the individual maps that load into a plot. The red rectangles are parcels, and the others are PCPs.
There's a ton of components that make this stuff up. It's pretty fascinating.
And I think you said that one of the biggest bang for the buck you could get was with new plot types, right?
That's
Or
right.
Plots.
You can make new levels with unique layouts just by rearranging the content we've already built without actually making anything yourself. So this screenshot is a bunch of the plots that we built for City Center. This is sort of highlighting, these are all loading the same maps, but they're all significantly different layouts, and playing on each one of these, feels different, and certainly plays different than any of the others. So the second type of map that we build in XCOM 2 are parcels. Parcels are the meat and potatoes of an XCOM 2 level. They come in three sizes: small, medium, and large. In this case, this is a small cottage, a medium single-family home, and large townhomes. And they're the most visually interesting and complicated spaces. They're usually buildings.
And for sure, parcels are the most difficult of our maps to build.
There's a lot of technical markup that goes into constructing a parcel. Fortunately, we have lengthy documentation to walk you through it if you're interested. So here's a series of buildings that you'll see as you play through City Center of various sizes that'll come up. It may be a while before you see them all. There's quite a few.
And so these spaces, I mean, you know, you look at an exterior space in XCOM, and you're looking for your cover and your routes to traverse, but the game is also very vertical. There's a lot of clambering up, a lot of dealing with line of sight from elevated positions, and so you're not just sort of designing the floor plan of the map. You also need to design that vertical space.
That's right. There was a lot more attention paid to roofs on this game. There's a tactical advantage to getting up high, and so we're paying attention to what you're on top of as well as what you're inside of.
You guys go take a bunch of reference photos of HVAC units up on top of roofs and such.
Hey, those gave us a lot of trouble. When you destroy the floor underneath them, what do? Do they fall and crush someone? Do they explode into tiny pieces?
Oh. What's the answer?
You'll have to find out.
Well, I've found out by falling to my death.
Yes.
That's one way it can go.
How did that go again?
Yeah, I was jumping down from the top roof to another roof, and then there were enemies in Overwatch inside the building. They saw me fall in front of the window, blew up the entire floor, and then I fell to my death.
Yep.
It's this close to evac. Oh, it's heartbreaking, but also kind of awesome, which is like what so much of XCOM is. How could that have gone so wrong for me? Damn, that was cool. All right, so now we're looking at PCPs, which stands for something that's not drugs, I gather.
That's true. That stands for Plot Cover Parcel, which is some clever technical jargon. PCPs are small sections of road networks that run in between parcels. They're built in sets, usually between a dozen or 24 maps. What we're looking at here are PCPs from the Small Town Boulevard set. There's a corner, there's a straightaway, intersections with other boulevards, or streets, or train tracks.
So we're ready for the XCOM SimCity mod.
Yeah, this looks like a game I used to play called Rivers, Roads, and Rails. I don't know if any of you guys play that. You got to match up the rail to the rail and the road to the road. And so that is that sort of you build those things with the markers and cues that when it's procedurally generated, a road is not going to match up with a railroad. It just sort of figures itself out.
Well, all of that is determined in the plot. So if you build the plot, in such a way that all the pieces are lined up, it'll work seamlessly. And if you don't, well, then it won't.
It'll look like city planning gone wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think the thing here too to note, like when we first started in its crudest form of the procedural system, it was parcels and plots, and then as we started finding needs to add more stuff, Brian came up with a system where not only are the parcels changing, but then all the stuff that provides cover on the streets is changing, and so the combinations get really insane. And we don't add things. We kind of have to make a case to add them, right? Like the danger with procedural is that you go in and you start turning all these knobs, and next thing you know, it's like I don't know what did what and why it's doing it. And so you kind of have to exhaust every possibility before you add something. And there's even a little hint here, like there's driveways that you notice. So if those driveways are facing a gas station, you're going to get a driveway there. If there's the side of a house, you'll get a sidewalk dropped in. And so there's all these, everything just kind of layers on in a nice way. And again, only as we needed to add it did we add it, which again, I think makes it a lot more easy to edit and understand it.
Now, you guys have been talking about sort of the procedural aspects of this, but it's still possible for me to go in there and design specifically a map in just the way I want it and put the bench where I want it, because I need to run the scenarios of how to defend my apartment building against alien invasion.
You can make these as procedural or as static as you want them. I think we really tried to make it so that there could be a percentage in between if people wanted to. If I built these statically, I think we probably would have gone a similar route as we were solving this. Some of the things we would have definitely done in a very similar fashion.
And we certainly do. There's no limit to what you really can do with maps. If you want to build a completely static EU-style map, you can do that. You'll have to live with dynamic lighting, though. No static lighting.
No. All right, what do we got now? Plot types.
plot types are how we divide the content up in the game. Each plot type has its own set of maps, plots, PCPs, and parcels. And in Xcom, there's 5 major plot types. There's the city center, the shanty towns, small towns, slums, and the wilderness. And so maybe we'll catch some panovers of the different plot types here. One of the decisions that we made in building these plot types is restricting certain missions in the game to only appear in certain plot types. That sort of helped space out evenly the content that you experience, so you're not always in the wilderness. And it also sort of gave each plot type its own identity. So, oh, I'm in the small town, that means I'll be doing a guerrilla ops mission. But as a mod, there's a lot of flexibility in what occurs where, and it would be easy to change where you are when you're doing certain things.
Yeah, I think the plot type was also kind of a core element to giving a personality to the different missions. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that the plot types, again, we really, one of the things we try to do, whether it's abilities or visuals, we try to push things apart from each other as much as we can to provide as much contrast. So you've got like the super clean cities, and you kind of push those next to the really lush wilderness stuff. And we're really trying to get diversity in as much of the visuals as we can get. And that trickles into gameplay is the same approach. I mean, we're really trying to push things apart.
It is the whole world that's totally boned, not just the cities.
So next up we have biomes. Our original content plan calls for 3 variations of wilderness. We had temperate wilderness, arid, and tundra. This would have significantly ballooned the number of maps that we created in order to play the game. So instead we came up with a system that allowed us to swap out art assets in maps to reuse them. So in the case we're seeing here, this is a cabin in the wilderness that we had built to be temperate wilderness, but without building any new maps, we can convert it on the fly to be an arid cabin, or in this case, a tundra cabin.
Yeah, and this was a huge win for us, just managing content, and I think you know kind of breaks down into a couple of things. Like there's procedural gameplay elements, right? Mission objectives and how the buildings are constructed and where cover's laid, and then you've got this procedural deco basically that intelligently swaps out, and it was another just step in adding this visual stuff that really needed to be there. You know, while we were in the middle of development, Brian kind of identified that we kind of needed to have this stuff work a lot more efficiently, and he set it up. And it's super robust and it's easy. Everything has something that it swaps to and everything that it adjusts to. And it really provided us a lot of extra visual elements to make the game look that much better.
in Biomes, everything we've been showing is all stuff that can be added
Yep.
to the game. So you can add new biomes. It's going to be a bit of artwork to do that, but it's all viable.
Yep.
So if you want to make that planet look a little more alien or something like that.
Or, add other, like, jungle, like this sort of stuff that was in the 94 version. Yeah.
All right.
And so real-time lighting was something that we brought in as well, and this really changed it. So we had some limitations, I think, with how we made maps in EU. As I took that screenshot you guys saw earlier, almost all the maps were night. There were a few day maps. Every Terra mission was either night or sunset, and so we couldn't just have it happen at any time we wanted it to happen whenever it came up in the schedule. It just was a little strange, and so with XCOM 2, we went to real-time lighting, and it allows us the ability to make the maps show up at any time while we're doing it. This is an example. You can see the same map with the time of day switching. We just switched it at runtime, and you can just see it loading in. And depending on where you are in the game, that's where it shows up. So
you can watch that clock in the corner, and when you land in that
it should be night when you do it. So
Now, so it reads the time and then displays the time of day using the dynamic lighting. Does that mean there's room in the modding of abilities and weapons for like Night Stalker abilities and stuff that depends on this? Can you sort of
Yes.
then reference that back?
We actually did have an internal kind of mod test environment in which one of the items gave you benefits at night. So we definitely tested that pipeline.
It is possible, I guess.
So
All right.
this is Tactical Quick Launch. This really lets you kind of, all the stuff we've been talking about, it lets you kind of play with that feature. So this is a debug mode. It's basically skirmish for XCOM, where you can go in and build a map kind of custom and, mix and match pieces of it. So we have a little video here of it in operation.
Also, there's a PAX South exclusive coming up pretty soon. Actually, a lot of this stuff has been, you guys just showing it off for the first time here.
It's true.
Very exciting.
So Tactical Quick Launch was one of those things that kind of came out of development just because early on when they were trying to figure out how to do procedural maps, they basically just put in a console command and they just got whatever map showed up. And so as a level designer, that's not exactly your ideal workflow. And so this is like the first thing I built when I came on the project was this kind of interface for building maps kind of at runtime. And so you can pick your options, pick your squad, pick the force level of the aliens that you're going to fight, and then generate the map, and it kind of builds it as you watch. And in addition to that, there's a little mini map in the upper right. You can click on that and choose different parcels to load up. And so if you're working on a specific parcel that you want to kind of see how it plays in an actual mission, you have the option to kind of test that one map and see, how would it go if I did this specific mission type, and with this level of opposition, how's that going to go? So this mode was kind of invaluable, I think, to the level design team.
Invaluable for testing. It beat the pants off of just loading the level over and over until you got the building you were working on at the time.
I will say that it started out a lot simpler, for sure. It has more options than a nuclear submarine now, but...
So if marketing mode is Greg, go away from my office, this is Brian, go away from my office mode.
So this is an example of kind of choosing the parcel we want to test and kind of dynamically loading it up. And then once you've got the map you like and the enemies you like and the squad you like, you hit start battle, and it's just as if you're playing a tactical game in the campaign.
Looks like a great test bed for putting all those mods into the field.
Yep.
All right, well, we are running very close to the end of time here, gents, and I know we've got a special video we want to show off before we send these folks off to get us all a little more excited for next Friday, as if we could get more excited for next Friday.
So yeah, so it wouldn't be a PAX without doing something a little special, right? That nobody else gets to see, correct?
Yeah.
So we're 5-6 days from launch, right? And we haven't really shown how the game starts. So we thought you guys might want to see what the intro of XCOM 2 looks like. Yeah? A little bit? Oh, come on, you can do better than that. Come on. All right. If I can ever get a start.
I think you paused it. Paused?
I swear it's more than a static screen.
Excitement continues to build as city centers across the globe prepare for the 20th anniversary of Unification Day.
Thousands line up at the site of the Great Accord, celebrating the formation of the Advent Coalition.
Keeping with their promise to humanity, 12 new gene therapy clinics will be opening in select cities by the end of the new year.
Despite the attempted attack by fringe elements, operations at the new facility in Paris thankfully remain unaffected.
In response to the unprovoked intrusion on the eve of our most beloved celebration, the speaker reaches out to us.
A small number of dissidents again repeat the mistakes of the old world.
Striking as we celebrate the benevolent savior who time and again offers only friendship and compassion.
Yet these trivial actions could never break the bond between humanity and the Elders.
Peacekeeping forces have already made several preemptive arrests of known collaborators. Advent again assures all citizens that today's celebrations will continue as planned.
Perfect.
The Advent administration reminds you to report all suspicious activity to your nearest peacekeeper.
Approaching position. You were right. They've definitely got their hands full today.
Stay focused. Prep gatecrasher.
60 seconds. Now.
Signal received. Loud and clear. Okay, Gatecrasher. Your turn.
Well, you've got more coming in just a few days. Xcom 2 coming out on Friday, February 5th, worldwide. A big thank you to all our panel members and for all you folks here in the audience for coming out. Be sure to follow Xcom on all the social medias because they're all over the place. And yeah, have a great PAX, folks. Thanks a lot.